Amanda is the Managing Director of Narrative Advocacy Media, a member of the Committee for the Advancement of Girls and Women. She wears far too many hats for me to mention all of them, but I will mention that for the last day and a half, Amanda's been sitting in the corner, capturing every moment, and blogging for the Huffington Post. So thank you so very much for that, and thank you for agreeing to moderate such an illustrious panel. Amanda. Joining Amanda on stage is, as I said yesterday, a very dear friend of the foundation. You guys have seen her on our website. You probably know her as a Canadian entertainer, a TV superstar, a humanitarian, and now an author. Jan Arden, I have to tell you, I've heard a lot of great things about you, and based on last night's dinner, I think I also heard that you're a great dinner companion, and I'll just leave it at that. So please, Jan, come on up to the stage. Alec Weck was born in southern Sudan. Civil war forced Alec to flee Sudan for the UK at the age of 14. In 1995, Alec had her first breakthrough in a music video for Tina Turner and quickly became known as the face of Africa. Alec is an avid actress and activist and will speak with us about her work on behalf of refugees. Alec, please join us on stage. David Keyes is the Executive Director of Advancing Human Rights, a contributor to the Wall Street Journal, Reuters, and the Daily Beast. He appears frequently in Bloomberg TV and MSNBC, and David was invited to join us at the summit to talk to us about his efforts to establish a Grand Prix in Saudi Arabia. David, please come on up to the stage. Now, I probably don't need to introduce Tanvi because we've heard from her a little bit over the last couple of days, and of course you heard me speak about the great initiative that Tanvi has taken in providing all of these materials today to everyone from people that she's been helping who have been victims of sex trafficking. But I will say, Tanvi, we first met last year in June 2010, and we've kept in touch. Nike sought you out to put you on the Clinton Global Initiative. You then turned that into a fellowship, and you were working in Washington. Tanvi is an incredibly impressive woman who we are very proud to have as one of our partners at the foundation. So Tanvi, please come up. And with that, Amanda, the floor is yours.
Check, check. So thank you all. We're so excited to be up here today. It's the last panel, and we really hope that you'll come to this panel with a lot of questions and make this a really engaging conversation. I want to start by just saying that I was really intrigued to learn that the delegate from Japan, where are you? Here you are. She mentioned on the first day that she arrived that the word empowerment didn't exist in her language. I thought that was interesting, and I started to reflect on my own definition of empowerment. And for me, it was really about the opening of doors and when potential meets opportunity. And today we're here to talk about how to use your platform in order to empower girls and women around the world. There are some photos behind me, and obviously they represent the panelists that are up here today. You see them in the lives that they're probably most notable for. Alec has walked the runways globally, but she's leveraged that platform and that fame to talk about the issues facing women and men in Sudan. We have Jan, who's an international superstar. She is. And she's used both her talent and her song through lyric to take on some of the issues that are important to her and to really give it a voice and a platform. And David, who has brought some props today, so hopefully he'll pull some out for us later in the panel, he has taken to blogging, the blogosphere, he's used social media, and he's really inspired internet activists and connected them to world leaders and decision makers. So he's used his platform in a way to make those connections. And obviously Tanvi, who needs no introduction, used the platform of last year's summit, the very seats that you're sitting in today, to catapult her organization Becoming I onto the world stage. So we're going to hear from each of them, and then of course we're going to turn it over to you. And I'd like to begin by just asking you each to take a moment, a couple of minutes, and tell us a little more about what it is that you do and the platforms that you use to do it. Start with you, Jan.
Well, I firmly believe that my music has been my politics in a way. I'm not a really political person. I think I believe in the politics of the heart. For me, it all really starts with, and we touched on this many times yesterday, over the last couple of days, about being yourself. And I think 99% of the success that I've had is because I've just been determined to be who I am. I think I kind of defy what a pop singer is supposed to look like. I think we're very used to images of scantily clad young women, you know, dancing about the stage. I'm kind of like a thumb with eyes. You know, I stand, I sing my songs. My message is really simple. It's about simple sentiment. But I have defied the odds. You know, I'm not 5'10" and 103 pounds. I'm not particularly, you know, this global beauty. I really have gotten to where I am because of my wit, because of my determination. And I still believe that persistence is bigger than talent sometimes. Well, a lot of the times, if you stay in the race, and if you stay you know, if you stick to your mission, you'll get there. Talent is subjective. One person might really love my music, and I've had guys on skateboards go by me and say, "Hey, are you that chick? I hate your music." I'm like, cool, but he said, "But I like you." And I thought that was an interesting moment for me. So yeah, just being myself and being yourself, I think, is where it all starts and ends.
Alec?
Wow, what can I say after that? No, I totally and completely agree with what you were talking about. Everything else really starts from becoming yourself and respecting. And if you can't do that to yourself, it's quite difficult to for somebody else to feel that you're going to be able to stand up for what's right and look out for another human being fella. So definitely, if you do believe in yourself, you're more likely to believe in somebody else and to see that goodness and to stand up for what's right. I will just start a little bit by, let me give you a little bit of my background. Obviously, I was born and raised in southern Sudan till the age of 12. Then I moved to Khartoum, which is the capital city, when the war got really worse, the civil war. And then at the age of 14, I ended up in London to seek refuge with my family. And that's when I truly felt I had an opportunity to now actually live my life as a teenage, whereas before, you know, going through the Civil war on the road with my family, not knowing, you know, if it's going to be safe or not, bombing, shooting, and and thousands of other people as well. So that was really touching and really scary, because you have to imagine I was like 7 or 10 at the time, and I don't really feel any child should go through such thing where they don't feel home is safe. As we all know, you know, home should be safe. I'm not going to carry on very long, because I'm sure other people would like to say some amazing, interesting things as well. But to cut the story short, I was really blessed enough to end up in London to seek refuge and continue my education. And at the age of 17, I graduated secondary school, which is considered high school. And of course, I was so excited, went to look at different colleges, and I ended up in the London Institute, because I've always enjoyed art. And my father has always told us, there's 9 of us, 5 girls, 4 boys, so girls rule. But my dad always said, you know, if you enjoy something, you should focus, you should follow it through. And nothing good comes easy. It comes with hard work and with appreciation. So that's what I did. And of course, at the age of 19, 2 years, coming up to 3 into my diploma, and then I was going to do my degree in art and history and design. A friend of mine in college told me, why don't you go with me to the park? It's a lovely day, Sunday afternoon. Your mother would let you, right? Because my mom is like, no raving, okay? None of that business, no clubbing. So definitely we weren't allowed to do that. So I was like, are you trying to be funny? Of course my mother's gonna let me go to the park. Like, that's so not funny. I thought you're my friend. Why are you making fun of me? But anyway, I went, and that afternoon in Crystal Palace Park, that's where the scout discovered me to be a model. And as soon as I started to work, in the fashion industry as a model, I realized right away that the best thing that my job had given me wasn't just the best frogs, the best dresses and the makeup and all the perks, and the traveling. I was really touched. It was very humbling. It gave me the voice. And I truly believe we have a social responsibility to give back, raise awareness, talk about important issues. And for me, it was firsthand, of course, experiencing the Civil War and seeing how it destroyed so many families and just overnight. And that, for me, was really dear to my heart, even though I had gotten a chance to get out and make something of myself and have a community to look out for me and had people that heard my voice. I felt it was extremely important that we should pass that down. Whether we like it or not, we are very blessed and we are here to look for each other. And that's what I continue to do. And like I said, it's not short term, it's long term, and that's why I'm here, and I continue to work with those organizations that actually dedicate their time in the ground, even though, I'm out here running around working, but I truly believe collectively the power of coming together. It's amazing beyond our imagination. So I do applaud you guys for being here, and I'm looking forward to hearing stories and, just all the inspiration.
Great. David?
Thank you.
Thanks so much for allowing me to come here and share my story with you, and this is all incredibly inspiring. When I was an undergraduate at UCLA, I had two great loves. I liked the Soviet dissidents and those who were struggling against tyranny in the Soviet Union. And I read the memoirs of these brilliant and brave individuals. And at the same time, I was studying Arabic. And I was reading bloggers in the Middle East who were voicing the same sentiments as these people whom they had no connection with, no cultural, no economic, no political connection with. And I was reading the exact same yearning for liberty. And I went to Egypt in the summer of 2006 and spent some time in the Islamist slums of Imbaba. And it was there that I was sitting in a Cairo cafe with a friend, and I started to talk politics with him. And he silenced me immediately, and he said to me in Arabic, "El hitani hawidan," the walls have ears. Don't talk about politics here. And I found that the only place that I could find a vibrant political discourse, the only place that people were really brave enough to come out against dictatorships in the Middle East was the online community, was social media, was Twitter, was Facebook. And I was blown away at the sentiments and the bravery of these people. And so I set about to create an organization that would help support online activists and dissidents in the Arab world and Iran. And much of my worldview was shaped by the Soviet dissidents, so I'd like to share just two quick quotes with you that I think describe the power of telling the narratives as we are here today. The first comes from my mentor who spent 9 years in Soviet prison. He wrote the following. He said, in 1986, the Soviet dissident Anatoly Marchenko died in the famous Chistopol prison after a long and futile hunger strike for improved conditions. 3 years earlier, I had gone on a similar hunger strike in the same prison and had been subjected to the same torturous conditions by KGB thugs. But the authorities eventually gave in to my demands. Why? Because my 9 years of imprisonment were accompanied by a relentless worldwide campaign and steady, unambiguous pressure on the communist regime by leaders of the free world The regime knew it would pay a heavy price if I were to die. With Marchenko, it was confident that the world did not care enough to do much more than mount a formal protest. This inspired me from the perspective of a dissident. But how do we know that this actually works with policymakers and that telling our stories and that voicing our concerns actually makes a difference? This comes to me, at least, by way of Irwin Cotler, who serves on the board of my organization, who was Justice Minister of Canada. And in 1997, he was honored at a dinner in New York with Gorbachev. And he walked up to the former Soviet leader and he said, "There's a question that's been vexing me for years. I want to know, why did you let my client, Natan Sharansky, who spent 9 years in prison, out of jail?" And speaking through a translator, this is his exact quote. He said, "I never knew anything about Sharansky. I never even knew the name. I came to Canada as Minister of Agriculture, and I appeared before a Canadian Parliamentary Committee on Agriculture. But instead of getting questions about agriculture, I got questions about Sharansky. I left the Parliament building and saw placards of Sharansky. Wherever I went, I was confronted by Sharansky. So I came back to the Soviet Union and I said, 'Who is this guy, Sharansky?' I got the files and said, well, he may have been a troublemaker, but he isn't a criminal. And so we ordered his release." This applies directly, I think, to the Middle East as well, and I think the Arab Spring is in part a testament to that. One of the people we work with spent 8 years in an Iranian prison, and when he first appeared in front of the judge, a picture of The Economist was held up with him on the cover. And he said, "With this picture, you've signed your own death warrant." It was 8 years later that he came out and he said that that picture actually saved his life, because there were people to his left and right whom we had never heard of who disappeared without a trace. And so the strategic challenges of bloggers and online dissidents was of great concern to me and a few colleagues. And we started to think, how is it that we can better tell their stories? Because I believe, as this conference believes, that faces and names are the most effective way to convey a message. And that's not just conjecture. There's an amazing study by a University of Oregon psychology professor. And he gave 3 test groups different sets of information. The first test group, he gave facts about the millions of people starving in Africa. And the second test group, he gave the picture of a single starving 7-year-old child. And the third test group got the picture of a boy and a girl. And they all had the same amount of allotted money. And he asked them, how much are you willing to give to this cause? And on average, people confronted with a single face gave twice as much money to the cause as those confronted with the millions of people starving and the facts and the statistics. So I spoke at Google a number of months before the Arab Spring to a room full of Arab cyber dissidents, and I said, with due respect, you have a big problem because you have unprecedented power. At the click of a button, you can reach 1 million people, and yet there's not a single American in 1 million who knows your names. And that's a big problem. How is it possible that the Soviets could rally hundreds of thousands of people on the wall in Washington, but we don't know your names? And so I wanted to give a platform to these incredibly brave individuals who are on the front lines against tyranny. Many of the best ones I found were women, Dalia Ziada in Egypt, and Suhaira Tassi in Syria, and Wajih al-Huwaidar filming videos of herself driving in Saudi Arabia. I'd like maybe a little later to get into the issue of Saudi Arabia. But the idea of this organization, and I think the power of telling individual stories, not just good in of itself, but it really is the most effective way to raise the plight of those who are struggling for their unalienable rights. And either you believe that or you don't. And it either applies to Saudi Arabia or it doesn't. And so maybe in the question and answer session, we can get into the some of the outside the box ideas that we came up with, including the first ever Saudi Women's Grand Prix. Thanks.
Tanvi.
If there's one thing I'm going to do when I go back home, it's I'm going to take a paintbrush and I'm going to go to the biggest wall in my room, and I'm going to write one word in really big letters. It's people. Just that one word. Because I think that at least for the past 3 to 4 years, everything that's happened to me, every experience that I've gotten, every opportunity that has come across me, has to do everything with people. People fascinate me. I think it's amazing, the things that people say, the way that people behave, the things that people want you to think, and the way they actually are. I think it's amazing, whether it's the people that I work with in my organization, or it's the people that I work for, or the people that I meet. So I think if there's one thing that I can attribute everything that I've gotten till now is to people. I think that's the most important thing about how you are with them and how you put yourself in that scenario in front of a group of people. So I was at the summit last year, and a lot of the girls have been asking me, so how did you start your organization? How did it all come about? And I think like 4 minutes is too small for me to go into that, because it takes, especially in a country like India, it takes a lot to be starting something like this. But I've always been interested in theater. I used to do theater all through high school. I love the stage. I love the limelight. If I could sing and dance even a little bit, I would have been on Broadway today for sure. But so again, the people that I met and the people who inspired me, I really decided, and I thought that the only thing that these people need is a platform to actually make a difference, to actually do something in their communities. It can be anything. It can be starting a campaign, it can be recruiting people, it can be getting volunteers to some remote part of your country. It can be anything, you just need a platform. So that's how I first decided to maybe start a theater company, to in a way use theater as a platform to encourage people to create awareness about issues that are happening in my country. But then again, I thought, theater is probably not the only thing that I'm passionate about. There's so many other things. And that's how Becoming I came into place. It's called Becoming I Foundation, and it's set up in New Delhi. And right before the summit, what I was doing, it was just an idea that, yes, there's a platform that I need to create for the young people in my country. It was just a couple of scribbles in my notebook here and there, trying to recruit people, maybe even a Facebook page, which was getting bigger by the day. Then I was looking for my first project. What should I concentrate on? There's so many problems in India. I mean, India has a lot of everything. It has the most cultures, the most amount of food, the most languages, and, well, the most problems. You find, you name it and you've got it in India. So one of the challenges that I faced then was what is it that I want to work on, and what is it that I can spend time on and actually make a difference? And I met Tara, the representative of USA today, and she introduced me to the community that we're working in right now. And the first day that I visited the community with her, I was hooked. There was no going back. I met the community leader, I met the girls, I met the women, I met the children, and just interacting with them, it was amazing, because you can never for once think that this is what these women or these children go through. They were normal. They were like me. I'm a child with them every time I visit them in the village. And it's astonishing the kind of things that they go through. So I was hooked. I knew that I had to do something about it. So right before I was coming to this summit, I was recruiting a team. And one of the things that we love to do at Becoming I is we criticize each other a lot. So I say things, okay, this is how we're going to do it. And there are 4 other people, no, you're wrong. I mean, that's not how you do it. So we criticize each other a lot. So when I was planning to start Project Fizza, which is the project that deals with victim of sex trafficking, a lot of people were very cynical about it. They said it's not going to work out, you don't see any long-term or tangible benefits at all, it's all embedded in their culture. How do you really think you're a 19-year-old kid, how are you going to even think about getting sex trafficking out of that community? So when I came to the summit, I was on the fence. I didn't know what to do. Should I go with it? Should I make it my first project? Should I spend time? And then I came to the summit. And it sounds very, very from a movie, but I'm telling you, and this I say to the girls every time I spend time with them, the summit is going to change you forever. It's not just the things that you learn in your workshops. It's not just what the panelists say. It's the people that you meet and the energy in this room. And that's what I was just talking to Farah about in the afternoon. And she just said, how do you like it being back? Is it different? And is it weird for you? And I said, no, it can never be weird for me, because I crave this. I crave this energy, some sort of source of inspiration, and I really needed it. So that's how I came here. And that's the one thing that I said to myself after the summit got over is, if I don't do it, then who will? And I went back to the community, and no matter Thank you. And no matter how much time it takes, no matter how much time we have to spend in that community, no matter how many times I fight with my parents about letting me go there every Saturday, no matter how many people criticize me, I know that once I'm there, I'm working, and it's only because I feel passionate about what I'm doing, and I really believe that some change can happen there, is that I started the organization in the first place and then the project. So now it's been about a year, and we've moved far along with Project Fizza. What we've been doing is creating alternative sources of employment for the women and creating opportunities of life skills development for the children. So one of the examples of alternative sources of employment is the bags that are sitting in front of you right now. These things that we made the women make. And Farah was excellent, and she said, yeah, bring them along, and we'll give it to everyone. And the amount that we're getting out of this serves as their very first salary, their very first income. And now they know that no matter what our opinions all around the world are on prostitution or on oppression or anything, so the women now understand that now we have a choice, that my husband or my parents or my in-laws cannot force me to go towards anything that I don't want to do, because I have a choice. I can make pretty bags and I can send them all the way to Paris instead of doing what my family's forcing me to do. So basically, that's what came out of the summit for me.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we have a lot of questions to get through. The first question I have is both for David and Tanvi. If you don't start in a place where you have an audience, like Jan and Alec, how do you build an audience? How do you first get people to pay attention to what you're doing and start talking about it? David?
Well, the world has obviously changed dramatically in the last few years alone. Once upon a time, if you had a story to tell, and you were sitting in Cairo or Jeddah or any one of a number of capitals or cities around the world, it was literally impossible to be heard. But part of the whole idea of cyber dissidence and the platform of the internet is to give people that voice. But of course, saying something isn't enough. You have to say something unique and interesting. And what we do essentially is link bloggers with policy makers and the press. And a lot of times what I hear is from op-ed editors who tell me that these dissidents and these bloggers, they actually have no idea what someone in the West needs to hear, what something will print is. And policymakers come and they say, we need something concrete. We need an idea to put into action. And part of our job is to bridge the two. So simply telling your story might not be enough. You have to say something unique. You have to say something that hasn't been said before. And I think the beautiful part of this synergy is bringing people's minds together and collaborating and having that energy take the form of something that hasn't necessarily been done before. And the one example I'll bring, because I think it's in part what I'm here to speak about, is the idea of this Grand Prix. Now, for whatever reason, don't ask me why, I am obsessed with the idea that women have the right to drive. And I find it so offensive on so many levels that you can't get in your car for whatever reason you want and drive from point A to point B. And there's one country on the face of this planet which prohibits women from that most natural of right. And so I got to thinking about those old Soviets I like, one of whom is named Andrei Malrich, who was famous for kind of making fun of his KGB interrogators. And I thought, what better way to show the world and to show the Saudi government that women have an unalienable right to get behind a car than to actually put on a car race. And I was told by so many people that this is just a ridiculous idea, don't do it, it shouldn't be done, et cetera, et cetera. But then slowly, I started to email people, and the first woman who raced in the Indianapolis and Daytona 500, Janet Guthrie, said, great idea, I'm on board. And then Leilani Muntar, one of the top 10 female race car drivers in the world, said, great idea, I'm on board. And then policymakers said, I'm on board, and we got a national security advisor and a head of CIA and an ambassador to the EU and European parliamentarians, and slowly it began to take form. And I think it was in part because the idea had never been done before. There was no such thing as a Grand Prix for Saudi women. So we don't know where it's going to be held yet, and that's part of the reason I'm here, to appeal to you to actually make this happen. We need a racetrack. Yeah. But I brought what Leilani Muntar, the race car driver, wrote about this Grand Prix, and I find it very moving. I'd like to share it with you today. She wrote, as a female race car driver, and as a woman who has traveled to Saudi Arabia and seen the oppression of women firsthand and experienced it myself while I was there, I strongly support the Saudi Women's Grand Prix. When I traveled to Saudi Arabia in the 1990s, I met a woman who was a brilliant doctor, and she had tears in her eyes when she asked me, "If I ever make it to America, will you teach me how to drive a car?" She had to spend much of the money she made as a physician on having a full-time driver take her wherever she needed to go. It's outrageous that in America I can drive 200 miles an hour on a racetrack inches from my male competitors, but women are not even allowed to drive in the streets of Saudi Arabia. It's high time for a change. Let's do this, ladies. Now, I had a conversation the other day with an academic from NYU, and she told me, look, this driving issue has gotten more than enough press. It's oversaturated. I read about it in the media. And I said, the only time it will have gotten enough press is when women can drive in Saudi Arabia. That is the only time we should stop fighting for this. It's the only time we should stop screaming about this and demanding this most natural of rights. But I have to stress this idea didn't come to me alone. It was taken in no small part from reading the blogs of Saudi women and hearing their pleas, not just to drive, but to get rid of the guardianship system, which makes it illegal for a woman to exit the country without a male guardian, a mahram. It makes it illegal to attain surgery, sometimes without a man's permission. And it leads to the flogging of women for the most outrageous of so-called crimes. Now, the props I brought are difficult to see, but I think they're important because it does what this summit is about, which is that it helps people come with an image of actually what people are going through. It's not just rhetoric, it's not just words.
Do you guys want to see the props? Okay. Let's pull out the props.
Now, this is brought to me directly from Saudi Arabia. In Arabic, it's called a salt. And this is used actually to beat women like Sausan Salim, who was whipped, sentenced to 300 lashes for entering a government building without a male guardian. It has been used to whip women like Khamis al-Sawadi, who at 75 years old was sentenced to 40 lashes for receiving bread from a non-male relative. And so when the words moderation and Saudi Arabia are used in conjunction with one another, as difficult as it is to see, I think it's exceedingly important that people in the West see these sorts of instruments which are used on a regular basis against women in Saudi Arabia, and it's high time that we demand an end to this on so many levels. Now, if you go to the embassy website of the Saudi government in Washington, you'll read the following stipulation, quote, "Ladies cannot apply for a transit visa if not accompanied by a male guardian." So lest you think that this is being hidden for some reason, it's directly on the embassy's website. I'd like you to imagine if the South African embassy had a stipulation saying blacks cannot apply for a transit visa if not accompanied by a white male. What kind of outrage that would evoke in us, how much condemnation and upbraiding that would be worthy of. So I know that this is a little dramatic, and I apologize if it offends someone, but I think these are important things to see. And particularly on the driving issue, it's so symbolic. Some people have said to me, well, why don't you pick a more important issue? And there's a million issues that need to be worked on. But the idea and the symbolism of getting behind a car and going anywhere you want is something that I think all people can identify with. And the idea that there's one country on the face of the planet which has it right and everyone else is wrong when it comes to such a basic right. We need to think of creative ways of telling this story over and over again until it ends. That means traditional media, that means social media, that means appealing to policymakers. So when we got to brief Congress, we raised the names of these women who are pleading for the right to drive, and shortly thereafter, 14 female U.S. senators signed a petition to King Abdullah asking him to ease these restrictions, and that's the kind of movement. And Secretary of State Clinton, who we also got to brief, came out in favor of this movement as well. And I think that movement is building, and it's up to you and it's up to us to maintain that pressure at all times and never cease, even for a single moment, until these unalienable rights are afforded to all men and women.
Okay. I'm going to change the question a little bit for Tanvi. So the point of the video was to show that platforms can take a variety of shapes. Can appear in song and art, can appear in blogs and advocacy, can appear in social media. What were the first tools that you used, now that we have all of these toolkits available to us, to start to raise your voice and start be heard?
That was actually one of the challenges that I had in terms of starting an organization from scratch. What are the first things that you look at? And I'm sure all of the delegates sitting here are wondering the same things, that what is that one thing that I need to do which will just let everyone know that, well, I'm starting an organization, you can come and join. For me, it was Facebook. That is it. Because, I mean, I just thought about it, and that's, apart from people, that's another thing that fascinates me. It's Facebook. I mean, if you can be on Facebook for hours and hours looking at people's photographs, liking, unliking, commenting, writing on people's on walls and all of that, then why can't you use that media to spread a message, to tell your story? So that was one of the first things that I did when I just had the idea of the organization in my head. It was creating a Facebook page. And then I spread it to my friends, and then it just got bigger and bigger. And I think right now, if I look back in terms of how did I mobilize an audience, why do people know about me today, it's definitely through Facebook. I mean, we started off by just telling them about the concept, and then eventually it moved on to, well, I had to recruit a core team, I had to recruit a team of members, and then I sent out an application and I said, well, here it is, and if you think you want to join me, then please apply. So immediately, I think the first time that I did so, I got some 60 people from all over Delhi who were applying to be a part of the core team. So then I went through them and, I selected my core team. Then the second thing we did was start with volunteer inductions. That we need volunteers to be going to these places that we're working in. And again, all of that happened through Facebook. You just put it up. And I mean, the amazing thing of Facebook, and I'm sure everyone in this room will know, is that you share something, then the question is not how many people read what you've shared, the question is how many people they share it to, and then how many people those people share it to, and then how many people those people share it to. It's amazing how the chain is built. So, I mean, everything that we've done has somehow initially started with social media. And I remember this one volunteer induction that we had a few months ago, and we had people from other countries that were applying. And the most shocking part was that we had about, I think, 7 people from Egypt that applied. And that was really amazing for me, because my first question was, aren't you having a revolution in your country right now? I mean, how do you get the time to apply, and how do you get the social media to apply? But that was pretty amazing, that, people sitting in so many other parts of the world are literally emailing me and saying that, we like what you're doing. Can we somehow reciprocate this in our own countries? So becoming I, in terms of the work that we're doing, might not be very big, but in terms of the ripple effect, in terms of the domino effect, in terms of the kind of lives that are affecting, in terms of the people that know about us, and I would hope are getting inspired, is huge. It just crosses across barriers. It's amazing.
Thank you. Question for Alec and Jan. How do you turn fans into advocates and fame into advocacy?
Okay, I'm going to try and answer it the best of my ability. How do you turn fans into advocacy? Like I said earlier, one of the most humbling things that fashion has really given me is the voice, and I take that really serious, not just to, run around and just parade about myself. I truly believe I've been blessed for a reason to use it, and to use it for very important issues. Our industry is not very big, but the voice is very loud. I always make fun about backstage. If you really had to sit back and think about where we all come from, it's kind of like the United Nations. Literally. I mean, I always say, if I'm in there, imagine all of the other people from around the world, but we don't really think about that, because we just think about it as like, that's like an Oscar de la Renta, or that's a Karl Lagerfeld, or that's a Alec Weck, or that's Kate Moss, or Cindy Crawford, and we don't really think about where we all come from, and the amount of the noise of the voice that the industry has given us, how much we can do with it and make so much changes. And again, to go back to what you asked me, I would say, you know, when I started to want to give back and to really go there, it started with, obviously, with my home country, especially South Sudan. So I wanted to go back after I'd been out for like 7 years or so, and I was quite traumatized. I didn't want to go back right away when the war was going on, but I still went back when the war was still taking place. But I couldn't really go through the country because obviously I had given up my passport to seek refuge in England. But when I did go back through Kenya, we had to enter and then go through the border, and we came across some of the refugee camps. I saw, let's say, I saw my people in a way that I never would have seen them. I mean, the children were so not malnutrition, like just big bellies, like eyes rolling back. I mean, if anything, like kids and old people, like young people, really put tears to my eyes because I feel they truly are what the future is. If we didn't get the chance in life as adults as we are now, imagine where the world would be. And if this is what I'm seeing, what will the world be? And not even that far forward. So that's why, you know, when I was asked to come here for this, you know, summit I was really, touched and honored because I truly believe if we don't do something for, young people at the age of 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22. Like these are I feel, very sensitive, very tangible years where it really sets a tone because we always have to pass that torch down. So when I went through the border and I was going through the refugee camps, I mean, I was really just moved to see what the children's situation was. It was, worse. Like not just every day, there's one child, like a lot of children's getting buried. I seen mothers cooking, literally like, if you see a leather rag that is like thrown down on the floor, they were like cutting it up and boiling it because there was nothing, just to try and put something in the stomach. I mean, you could just imagine. It's like you have a leather pair of pants. They were cutting that and boiling it just because there was absolutely nothing. And then there was a drought. So there was like nothing to even, no vegetables to even eat. It was hardcore.
Did you have media with you when you were there?
Oh, absolutely. I went there, and that's when I came across Doctors Without Borders. And I continued to work with them because they truly were they were the people that were putting their life, on the line, where when the bombs are going off, they're literally running underground to try and, keep safe. And they were the ones that were helping save lives, and they couldn't help everybody because they didn't have much. And there wasn't much of a clinic. They were like, oh, here's the clinic. And I was like, oh, I would like to see it, And perhaps, if I can try and do something where, individual sectors can come in and help out if they really knew what's going on. If people really knew what was taking place, they will do something. And I think that's when we have to not just get creative, but understand how to reach different people. There are people that get discouraged because they don't want to see that, but they want to do something. There are people that it's way too hard for them to comprehend what's taking place, but yet they would like to do something in another way. So, kind of working in fashion, I start to realize not everyone will totally, you'd be so passionate. Do you understand what's going on? Like, are you serious? And you want to do something, and you have all this money, and you have all this media outlet, but yet not everyone can do the same thing, and I truly learned that. So when I saw Doctors Without Borders trying to help a lot of lives, especially children, their clinic
That became your outlet? That's how you focused your energy?
Yes, definitely. I realize, you can get very overwhelmed, but if you do really understand that we need to come collectively, that's what builds a nation, and that's what makes a difference. So
it must be really interesting for people like you who have a spotlight on you to make sure, maybe Jan, you can answer this, to make sure that you don't overshadow the cause that you're trying to promote.
You definitely need to, collectively. It's not just individually. Like, for example, and then I'm going to wrap it up, with Doctors Without Borders, how they were dealing with the malnutrition with the kids, they basically came up with a system which is like a bracelet, and it was called Bracelet of Life. And it was red, orange, yellow, and green. And basically, when you go to the doctors, how do they know if you're overweight or if you're underweight? There's a chart, which is your height, your age, and so forth. And then that's how they kind of, figure it out. So this automatically, if a child, you turn this bracelet all the way to red, this kid needs that milk that has all of the nutritions. And the kid, I'm telling you, I swear to God, from the eyes rolling, the kid was going to be buried. I mean, these doctors were like miracles. Or, I couldn't believe it. The next morning, that child, which would have just died easily, as they just doing throughout the day, is just coming back to life and so forth. Another way was this medicine that was when, polio broke out, they were giving, inoculating the children instead of injection. It wasn't working. The kids did not like it. So they would give it to them by mouth now, which tastes delicious. So many children were running back for seconds. And they couldn't really figure them out. Like, which one did we give and which one did we not? Because they were all butt naked. And we all kind of like resemble each other. If you don't live in the village. So they were like, okay, this is out of control, And some of the kids, they may not have gotten it as well. So how they started to work with the community, and one of them was actually my cousin from my mother's side. So he would be like, yin, which means you already got one. Like, don't even go there. And he became like the ID for the kids because he's obviously lived with them and he can recognize them. And I was quite surprised. I was like, and what's your name? And this is amazing, where you're from. And all of a sudden, he's like my mother's cousin. And I'm like, oh, nice to meet you. You're my family. So it all makes sense. So it's really fantastic.
Okay, we need to move on a little bit. So I'm just going to have Jan answer the question that yes, I'm going to have to insist. And then I'm going to turn it over to you, so I hope that you have questions ready to go. Yeah, good. Okay,
Sorry, I went on way too long.
That's okay. So the question I asked was, how do you make sure that your fame or the spotlight that's usually on you doesn't overshadow the cause that you're trying to promote?
It's very, very simple. Even listening to my fellow panelists, I'm sitting here absolutely overwhelmed by the amount of information, the amount of issues that are in the world. And me, I'm a privileged person that grew up in Western Canada. I live in an idyllic setting. My life certainly hasn't been without problems. But I think first and foremost for me, and much like everybody else in this room, I have two conflicting voices in my head all the time. There's a voice that cheers me on as a person, as an artist, as a woman, as a friend, as a daughter. And there's a voice in my head that's equally as powerful, that's trying to foil every plan that I make. It's trying to tell me that I'm ugly, that I'm worthless, and it's almost like the little devil and the angel sitting on your shoulder. So it starts in a really, really simple place. When all this other stuff seems completely overwhelming, it has to start with you and your heart, your spirituality, your confidence in yourself, much like our Japanese delegate has, mentioned, I want to come here and I want to learn how to be myself and learn how to be confident. A great friend of mine told me such a simple thing one day, and she said, Jan, don't believe everything you think. Just because you're thinking it, just because you have this voice in your head that is instilling fear in you, instilling doubt in you, that's making you really question your own ideals. Because let's face it, being a human being is a fairly lonely voyage. Sometimes we feel really isolated. I mean, regardless of all the issues that we as young women want to tackle in the world, the first issue we have to tackle is who we are innately. What are we made of? What are our basic fundamental moralities? I don't think we can help a single soul on this planet until we are firmly standing on our 2 feet, understand what our human politics are. And that's been a journey for me. I'm going to be 50 years old in March, and I'm still really trying to discover what it is that I like about myself, what it is that is of value to other people. And, you know, the bottom line for me, and what has certainly kept my fans as my soldiers out in the world that actually listen to the things that I have to say, and it comes down to honesty and integrity. I don't go on stage and pretend to be somebody else. I have never created a persona that I take out there with me. I walk out there a very humble, grateful person, and when I speak to people or when I sing to them, on some level they understand what I'm saying, and they also find a little piece of themselves in what I'm saying. So it's about these really, really simple connections of the heart. You know, I try and picture a string that just ravels through each human being sitting in front of me. And if you give it a little tug, everyone just kind of bonks together. And just for that moment, you find your commonality. And I think those are the small things that will, you know, bring change. I mean, like these people here that are trying to do things on an extraordinary level, but I think it starts with their hearts, their individual beliefs, their passions, and they've kind of followed their bliss. So work on yourself. Take the time to work on yourself. Be empathic. Care more about other people. Take the time to do that.
Thank you.
Amen.